Democratic lawmakers joined protesters on Capitol Hill this week to melt down over the Trump administration's efforts to cut wasteful government spending at USAID. And they specifically took aim at DOGE director Elon Musk. Watch.
God damn it, shut down the Senate! We are at war!
Fire Elon Musk. Elon Musk took control of our country's financial nuclear codes.
What we not gonna do is stand around while they pull this bullshit. We are gonna be in your face. We are gonna be on your.
We will see you in the courts, in Congress, in the streets. Elon Musk is a Nazi nutball baby.
Nobody elected your. This is not Elon Musk's country.
We've got to fight back. You've got to be on the streets tomorrow.
The billionaire tech executive and his DOGE team are even facing public threats. A Boston University employee posted photos of 5 of Musk's DOGE staffers on X, saying they were, quote, wanted, dead or alive, for carrying out a coup. A U.S. attorney telling the Boston Globe the post is being investigated. The Musk fired back on X. Here's what he wrote. Noted, before adding, he has committed a crime. And, you know, Griff, I want to add something else here. Let's go back to the purpose of DOGE before we talk about these physical threats against these staffers who are trying to do the work that has been assigned to them. You've got Sean Duffy, the transportation secretary. He and Elon Musk have already spoken and said, let's upgrade the air traffic controller, the systems within the towers across this country in the wake of the crash that hit over the Potomac. 67 people died. They've got a problem with that. Do you want to upgrade the technology at the nation's airports?
Which is highly outdated, and we learned that as a reporter that covered the crash in Washington. And that's just one example. I think the larger picture, Cheryl, that's so fascinating, there's a rich hypocrisy here that the Democrats are becoming profanity-laden, unhinged over an unelected advisor who I believe volunteers for President Trump that is taking a look at waste and inefficiency across the entire federal government, which we've known for decades is bloated and engages in wasteful spending. And yet these are Democrats that are outraged that an unelected volunteer to the president is taking a look at it after unelected bureaucrats in agencies like USAID and across federal government have squandered billions of taxpayer dollars. The question is, are there actual Democrat voters out there that support gross, incompetent, wasteful spending when you look at DEI programs in Syria, a transgender opera in Colombia, and these other examples? Yeah. There's no doubt that USAID has priorities and perhaps spent some money on something that was important. But from the time Trump left, when they spent about $20 billion on USAID, to the final year for Biden, it was $40 billion. So why wouldn't the Democrats want to at least take a look at the auditing of it?
You know, Martha, what's interesting I found out was that if you go back to the Clinton years and the Clinton presidency, that time his Secretary of State wanted to eliminate USAID because of the misappropriations of funding. Yeah. It got shot down. It never happened. But what they wanted to do at the time, that particular Secretary of State, he wanted to bring it back to the State Department. That is now what we're talking. Yes, now that's what we're talking about doing once again. But this is why the bureaucracy, that behemoth in Washington, is able to stop and squash anytime you try to have fiscal responsibility.
I mean, the lady doth protest way too much. I mean, when you are screaming about holding on, you know, bloody murder, screaming on about hanging on to every last bit of the bureaucracy that exists, that got us to a place where we are $36 trillion in debt. Does anybody think, Republican, Democrat, that this is what the founders had in mind for this country? I mean, does anyone think so? It is so outrageous to me. They are so freaked out by the simple question of, you know, people who are on read-only mode just looking at the books. Yeah. Like any American corporation, you know, if you're a public corporation, your books are open. Your shareholders are investors in your company, right? The analogy is that we as taxpayers are investors in this. We have put our own stock into the United States of America. We deserve to see how everything is functioning. That's what Musk is doing, because you know what? They tried this so many times in Congress. They cannot do it to themselves. Yep. They can't. They failed every time, even good intentions. Tom Coburn pointed out all this same kind of garbage and waste. He got nowhere, sadly, despite his best efforts.
And we're just learning this is actually just crossing, that the U.S. attorney in Washington, D.C., is going to begin an inquiry into people, quote, stealing government property and or threatening U.S. DOGE staff after referrals from Elon Musk and Steve Davis. This is Ed Martin. So action's already being taken to protect these people whose photos have now been outed on social media.
Right, and that's an appropriate stewardship of our tax dollars. I have to say, here's what's different this time around. And this is why it's going to work, because the collective dismantling of the bureaucratic bloat can only work when you do it all at once. And to your point, you know, Adam Andrzejewski and the Open the Books company, you know, for so long, like there are voices in the dark that have been crying out this entire time, showing transparent windows into the book so that we can see the ridiculous of our tax dollars. But only now, when everything in one fell swoop is happening, that's why it's working. And I can't understand why all of those Democratic leaders, to your point, are talking about the use of our money. It is our money that pays their salaries and that pads the coffers of this government. So why shouldn't we have insight into it? By the way, those need to be the campaign ads for every single person running against those incumbents in a year and a half. We need to get them out, but they dug their own grave there.
Yeah, and to Martha's point earlier, Maxine Waters has been at a lot of microphones in the last couple of days. But you know what? Also, Nicole, going back and zeroing in on USAID, look, they're not saying get rid of the entire thing. They're saying get rid of the bloat. USAID does do things like, I don't know, fund HIV research and prevention in Africa. They're not, and they're saying we're not going to take that away. We're going to give the core mission. We're going to keep the core mission and get rid of everything.
Yeah, you know, honestly, I have a lot of colleagues who are really upset right now. They're very concerned that the funding for their research that they're doing is going to be cut off. I mean, we do a lot of valuable research in the cancer community, and I keep telling to people, like, you just have to give it a pause right now. I think DOGE is probably one of the greatest things to happen in U.S. history, but change is hard. I can empathize with these Democrats right now. It's really hard. And in hospital systems, like, we have to do these huge electronic medical record transfers. And that makes me want to retire and quit my job because it is so hard and it is so much work, but it doesn't mean it's not for the greater good of things. And so while I think a part of them just wants to keep it, they want to keep control of the money, but I also think it's really hard to accept change. And Elon Musk with DOGE, I truly believe, are doing great things, and they are going to weed out the waste and make sure that what deserves funding should get funding. But I will say, and I say this with caution, Elon Musk is tweeting or Xing. He's talking about how some of his DOGE employees have been doxxed. They need to make sure that they are doing appropriate vetting, because let me tell you that at least one of those that have been doxxed, I mean, has been flagrantly racist on social media. And I do believe that we need to make sure that they may be the smartest, they may be good with a calculator, but they need to be good people too if they're working on this.